Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Bhagavad-Gita as it is, introduction, page 18. In the Bhagavad-Gita, worship of different demigods or rendering service to them is not approved. It is stated in the 7th chapter, 20th verse, Kamais tais ter rita gyana prapadyante nya devata tam tam niyamam astaya prakritya niyatasvaya. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Here it is plainly said that those who are directed by lust worship the demigods and not the Supreme Lord Krishna. When we mention the name Krishna, we do not refer to any sectarian name. Krishna means the highest pleasure, and it is confirmed that the Supreme Lord is the reservoir or storehouse of all pleasure. We're all hankering after pleasure. Ananda Mayo Vyasat. The living entities, like the Lord, are full of consciousness and they're after happiness. The Lord is perpetually happy. And if the living entities associate with the Lord, cooperate with Him, and take part in His association, then they also become happy. The Lord descends to this mortal world to show His pastimes in Vrindavan, which are full of happiness. When Lord Sri Krishna was in Vrindavan, His activities with His cowherd boyfriends, with His damsel friends, with the other inhabitants of Vrindavan, and with the cows were all full of happiness. The total population of Vrindavan knew nothing but Krishna. But Lord Krishna even discouraged his father Nanda Maharaj from worshipping the demigod Indra, because he wanted to establish the fact that people need not worship any demigod. They need only worship the Supreme Lord, because their ultimate goal is to return to His abode. The abode of Lord Sri Krishna is described in the Bhagavad-Gita, 15th chapter, 6th verse. Na tat bhashayate suyo, na shashanko na pavaka, yat gatva na nivatante, tat dhamma paramam mama. That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. This verse gives a description of that eternal sky. Of course, we have a material conception of the sky, and we think of it in relationship to the sun, moon, stars, and so on. But in this verse, the Lord states that in the eternal sky, there's no need for the sun, nor for the moon, nor electricity or fire of any kind, because the spiritual sky is already illuminated by the Brahma Jyoti, the rays emanating from the Supreme Lord. We are trying with difficulty to reach other planets, but it is not difficult to understand the abode of the Supreme Lord. This abode is referred to as Goloka. In the Brahma Samhita 537, it is beautifully described. Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuta. The Lord resides eternally in His abode, Goloka. Yet He can be approached from this world. And to this end the Lord comes to manifest His real form, Sat Chid Ananda Vigraha. When He manifests this form, there's no need for our imagining what He looks like. To discourage such imaginative speculation, He descends and exhibits Himself as He is as Shamsundar. Unfortunately, the less intelligent deride him because he comes as one of us and plays with us as a human being. But because of this, we should not consider the Lord one of us. It is by his omnipotency that he presents himself in his real form before us and displays his pastimes, which are replicas of those pastimes found in his abode. And I was asked to stop here at this point. So many important and beautiful topics Srila Prabhupada touches upon. Oftentimes he just speaks one sentence, but it needs, it could take hours and hours of elaboration. So mostly what I've collected out of these few paragraphs is that Srila Prabhupada speaks about the worship of demigods, how Krishna is the highest pleasure, and all associated with Krishna also immediately experience that same divine pleasure. How Lord Krishna comes to this earth to show his pastimes. How his abode, Goloka, is the highest abode and the supreme destination for all of us. And that the Lord can be reached from here. And Srila Prabhupada says how he shows himself as Shamsundar, and that is the form the devotees like to see, the all beautiful form of Shamsundar. Sometimes there's a discussion, and I actually found a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam in regards to, what is a sinful person? Has he done some bad karma in a previous life, and that's why he now suffers sinful reaction? Or maybe he's of low character, also because of some past misdeeds, and that's why it makes him now a sinful person. Or maybe he's just full of so many material desires. In so many ways this discussion goes on sometimes. What depicts a sinful person? But according to Srimad Bhagavatam and all of our acharyas, actually, he who does not remember Krishna is a sinful person. Because the moment you don't think of Krishna, or if you're not thinking of Krishna, you must be thinking of something. That means you're thinking of your own material desires or how to enjoy. Inevitably, you're thinking about yourself. So actually the most sinful thing, even so, of course the word sinful seems like a harsh expression, but what it means is the most sinful person is he, Hare Krishna, who is not thinking of Krishna. Because, why is it considered so sinful? Because he's wasting valuable time. This human form of life is a rarely achieved birth, as Prahlad Maharaj says, Durlabham Manusam Janma. That this human form of life is a rarely achieved birth. And Krishna is very kind, he's given the living entity a minute independence. But the only and the correct use of that minute independence is to learn how to think of Krishna. That is the proper use. And the abuse is to forget Krishna and act independently for your own desires. Smartavya satatam Vishnu Vishmatavyo najatu chit Save vidi nishedasyo etayo eva kinkara. Very famous verse from the Padma Purana. Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastras should be the servants of these two principles. So for a devotee, for everyone, this principle is there, that we should always remember Krishna and never forget him. And that takes some practice. You know, day and night Chaitanya Mahaprabhu encourages us to think of Krishna. So that's why we are performing this Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, to learn how to always think of Krishna, so not to misuse this valuable human form of life. You know, one time I was standing with my friend on our farm, New Govardhan farm in Australia. We were standing up on a hill. It's a very beautiful landscape. And we were standing there and talking and sharing some thoughts. And my friend said, Anuradha, isn't it just so beautiful here? You know, we were looking over the bush, the forest, the trees and the birds, and it's definitely very beautiful to look at. And I said, just at that moment I'd been reading something in the Bhagavatam, and I said, yes, somehow or other to these eyes in this particular body right now, we're given this view of a beautiful nature, you know, looking at green, looking at the birds and the sky and like that, and the flowers. But if you're looking through the eyes of Shastra, what do you see? You see gazillion, like endless ocean of living entities stuck in these particular bodies. In the tree body, in the rock body, in the mountain body, in the flower body. They're all living entities like you and me. But they're stuck. They don't have that capacity, or it's not available to them to understand that actually life is meant to remember Krishna and to go to the eternal abode. Because Krishna is always happy, he's the source of all happiness. And if we're associating with that, being a spirit soul, then we also feel that same Ananda Chinmaya Vyasat, like Prabhupada is quoting. So a devotee has a bit of a different vision, you know, a devotee has that vision of compassion. That's why actually the eternal associates descend here to the material world, because their heart bleeds to see the sufferings of the conditioned souls. So they come here to help, to remind, and that's why devotees are encouraged to preach, no? Like that. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Abhyam Svadama Parinishtaya Janma Labha Parapungsam Ante Narayana Smriti. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.6. The highest perfection of human life achieved by complete knowledge of matter and spirit. So the highest perfection of human life achieved by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of God at the end of life. Ante Narayana Smriti. So we are aiming for that, because Krishna promises in the Bhagavad-Gita, if you think of me at the time of death, you come home back to me. And we never return. That's what Prabhupada said in the verse we were just reading, that once we reach there, we never have to come back to this platform of repeated birth and death, disease, old age, and so much sufferings like that. We will be on the spiritual platform. And of course, Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita himself, Man mana bhava mat bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratipjano prayasime. Always think of me, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without a fail. I promise you this, because you're my very dear friend. So it's an open invitation to each and every one of us. Please just make this effort to think of Krishna. Put your mind on hold. Your mind wants to think about so many things. And actually the mind is determined to take us away from thinking of Krishna. Because for lifetimes our mind has had free run. You see, and now we're saying, no, my dear mind, just be peaceful, sit there nicely in the corner. Now we're going to think about Krishna. And if we actually endeavor for that, like sometimes you can, people argue like that. I remember when we lived as a family in Bhubaneswar, my Gurudev would give 2, 3, 4 hour Srimad Bhagavatam classes. So the whole morning was just spent sitting in the temple room listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. And sometimes devotees would visit and they would question, But how do you get anything done? How do you manage your life? And we would laugh because we had that experience that if you make yourself available to Krishna Katha and chanting the holy name, then somehow or other Krishna adjusts time and he lets you see what is the essential from the non-essential. And somehow or other, despite so many hours of sitting in the class, still all of our household duties, all of our chores, schooling the children, doing this and that, earning money, it all got done. Because Krishna here reciprocates. It's not that we have to work really hard to survive in this world and then somehow or other on the side try as best as we can a little bit to chant Hare Krishna. You know, sometimes I see devotees going to their work and they're driving their car in heavy traffic and chanting their japa at the same time. There's actually no need for that. If we have faith that Krishna is the proprietor of everything and he himself asked us to think of him, then surely he can arrange our life and he will help us that everything will be taken care of nicely. So in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, of course, Krishna tells, Prabhupada also touches on that, how fools deride me, you know, when I come in this human form. Because, as Prabhupada explains, this human form usually we identify with a lot of suffering. So how can the Supreme Lord have an ordinary human form like you and me? Apparently ordinary form. So people, they can't understand that God can have a form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. In the verse before, Krishna says, and this is important because we need to understand Krishna's position. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. This is very important to understand how Krishna appears in a human-like form, but that form is extraordinary. Satchidananda Vigraha, Srila Prabhupada is saying. And it is not subject to the three modes of material nature, because Krishna himself says, this material nature is one of my energy and is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. In text 13, Krishna then says, O son of Pritha, those are not deluded. The great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. This is important. This is what Prabhupada was speaking about, that if we can understand how Krishna is the creator of all energies, that everything is under his control. But as soon as somebody becomes a devotee, he immediately also comes under the protection of his divine nature. A devotee is no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. A devotee is directly under the care of Krishna. In other words, you could say, he's actually no longer of this material world. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. These are some valuable points to remember about the position of the Lord, our position, and how by taking shelter of Krishna, we are also now under the shelter of his divine energy. I found a beautiful verse. Srimad Bhagavatam in so many ways explains how Krishna is never affected by Maya. He comes here into this material world, but he's not affected by his own material energy that he has created. In the Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it is explained really nicely Guna dosha maya yaiva kechit ahur apaudita na tatra maya mayiva tadiyo to kuto yata. All qualities joined together in the Supreme Person by virtue of his transcendental powers. Yet no faults ever enter him, for he is the Absolute. Some persons who are not truly learned say that good qualities and faults exist in the Supreme Lord by the force of Maya. But in him there is no Maya, nor any agent who could possess Maya. How then could he have illusory good qualities and faults that Maya could produce? The opulences of the Supreme Lord are not therefore generated by the force of illusion. The Lord transcends Maya, and so he is known as the Supreme. So this is just one verse out of many that explains very nicely how Krishna's qualities are always transcendental, and it doesn't matter where he shows himself, and he's always on that absolute platform. Now Srila Prabhupada speaks about the demigods, and of course we know from the Nectar of Devotion in the 7th chapter, when the principles of devotional service are being explained, one of them is the demigods, and Srila Prabhupada nicely explains that one should never neglect to offer due respect to the demigods. One may not be a devotee of demigods, but that does not mean that he should be disrespectful to them. For example, a Vaishnava is not a devotee of Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma, but he is duty-bound to offer all respects to such highly positioned demigods. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, one should offer respect even to an ant. So then what is there to speak of such exalted persons as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma? And of course, a Vaishnava or a devotee of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna, he can understand the correct position of the demigods, how they are living beings taken exalted positions in the administration of the universe. How they are not Bhagavan in the sense that they're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they themselves are still somewhat affected by the modes of material nature. They're conditioned to taking birth and death. Their life is temporary. So a devotee can understand their exalted position in the right way and offer respect, because a devotee can understand that the demigods are actually very great devotees of the Lord. Actually, and Prabhupada in the text explains that generally people worship demigods because they have material desires, and he calls them atheistic. Because if you think about it, even in the material world, if somebody becomes your friend or even marries you, and then later, putting on a show of, I love you and you're so dear to me and yes, I want to have your relationship, but then somewhere down the line you realize, actually, he just took advantage of me. He just wanted my money, or he wanted some this or that, some comfortable life or whatever. He wanted something in exchange. It wasn't really love. So then you feel very disheartened, you feel very disappointed. So similarly, a lot of people, not just with the demigods, but with Krishna as well, they approach because they have so many desires, they want something in return. So that's not a loving exchange. So we are interested in loving exchange. And if we actually want to respect the demigods, then we need to understand what they themselves are saying. For example, there's this beautiful prayer in the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the prayers of Lord Shiva, and so many verses. It's really worthwhile to read. It's very instructive, very relishable, because Lord Shiva is speaking with so much love for Krishna to the Prajetas. He's instructing them. And in text 44, first he's saying, Any person who is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the controller of everything, material nature as well as the living entity, is actually very dear to me. So if I want to be a devotee of Lord Shiva, then I have to know what he's speaking. And he's saying, actually, he who is a devotee of Lord Krishna is very dear to me. Then in text 44, and this I wanted to say because Srila Prabhupada is mentioning how a devotee likes to see the Lord in his Shamsundar form. So there Lord Shiva says, my dear Lord, I wish to see you exactly in the form that your very dear devotees worship. You have many other forms, but I wish to see your form that is especially liked by your devotees. Please be merciful upon me and show me that form. For only that form worshipped by the devotees can perfectly satisfy all the demands of the senses. So this is actually a very important point, is fulfilling the demands of the senses. Why people approach the demigods or even Lord Krishna is because they have demands. Their senses are demanding in some way and they want fulfillment. However, Lord Shiva in a way is actually pointing out, only if you approach Lord Krishna can your senses be completely satisfied. Srila Prabhupada explains that in that purport to that verse. He says, when we engage our senses in the service of the Lord, the desires or the inclinations of the senses can be perfectly fulfilled. The demigods can't do that. They will fulfill your material desires, but you won't be satiated, you won't be fulfilled, you won't be peaceful in your heart because you still have so many other material desires. Whereas Krishna, he can reciprocate in such a way that if you're bringing your material desires to him, he can completely pacify your heart in such a way that those material desires are dissolved. They're gone. And you will be peaceful. You will be peaceful in your mind. And that's how you can be happy. That's the only way to be happy, is to be able to give up material desires and be free of them in your heart. Then they won't haunt you like so many ghosts, you see. It's like we know from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Savopadi Viniyamuktam Tat Paratvena Niyamalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktiya Ujjate. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all of our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. This is so beautiful and it's so important. What are those two side effects just by engaging in devotional service? One is freed from all material designations. You won't identify with this material body anymore. You will understand yourself as a spirit soul, as an eternal being. That you will fully realize. You will not have suffered due to so many material designations. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm this, I'm that. And one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. This is very essential because we're all haunted, like I said, haunted by so many endless material desires that are constantly flowing into our consciousness. And there's no end to it because we've been in this material world for so many lifetimes. So the only way to become peaceful is to engage in the service of the Lord and become actually free from those material designations and material desires. King Indra himself, did I say King Indra? Yeah, King Indra. In the Krishna book, we can read, because Prabhupada is saying in the text, even Krishna is advising Nanda Maharaj, don't worship King Indra. And of course he did a whole kerfuffle, sending the Shamantaka cloud, and he really tried. But in the end, by the mercy of the Lord, and Lord Brahma, like in the moment, all the Bhagavatam classes, we're hearing the beautiful prayers of Lord Brahma. So by the mercy of the Lord, and that's for us too, by the mercy of the Lord, we can come to the right understanding of what is actually the truth, what are the facts. King Indra admits, I was so puffed up, I completely mistook your position. I was thinking it's just that some, upstart young cowherd boy. By your grace, I can understand now that actually you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are transcendental to all material qualities, Vishuddha Sattva. You're never disturbed by the three modes. You are the original Father, the original spiritual master, proprietor. You subdue false pride, and you can chastise. Krishna can chastise us, no? And that is his mercy, because it's only for our betterment. In the material world, people are also suffering so much, and our heart hurts to see the suffering of so many people in so many ways. But at least in Krishna consciousness, whatever suffering comes to us, it's for our betterment, it's for our purification. And it's not hopeless. It's not such a hopeless suffering, such an endless suffering. We are knowing that we are under the protection and shelter of the Lord, and He's doing it for our betterment. And we have to have that trust and faith. And by thinking of Him, especially at the end of life, we'll come to Him and we'll never return to this material world. So that's wonderful. Lord Brahma also, he said the same thing, that you are actually the supreme worshipable personality of Godhead. I couldn't understand you, but despite my offenses, still you're so merciful to me, and you're giving me this opportunity of devotional service through hearing and chanting. Anyway, so many nice words the demigods are offering in glorification of the Lord. Now, Srila Prabhupada is also saying, of course we know also from the nectar of devotion not to equate, the names of the demigods with the holy name. But I wanted to come now to this point where Srila Prabhupada is saying the Lord comes to show His pastimes. This is very special, that the Lord Himself, He comes in so many forms, but He also comes in His original Shama Sundar form, Satchidananda Vigraha. Prabhupada is saying, He comes in His original form here to the material world to show His pastimes. And there's a very, very specific reason. And I'll try as best as I can to explain that in a moment. Of course, we know from the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita that He comes to re-establish religious principles, but also to show His original form to His devotees that are here. For example, and I'll read something from Srila Prabhupada's purport in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.3.31. Prabhupada quotes the beautiful verse from Brahma Samhita, Brahmanjana Turita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Ridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Swarupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Prabhupada says, pure devotees whose eyes are anointed with the ointment of prema, love, want to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Sham Sundar, Muralida, with a flute swaying in his two hands. This is the form available to the inhabitants of Vrindavan, who are all in love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Sham Sundar, not as Lord Vishnu Narayan, who is worshipped in Vaikuntha, where the devotees admire his opulence. One time my Guru was telling this story how when Krishna disappeared from the rasa dance and the gopis are running through the forest, looking for Krishna, and Krishna in the form of Narayan actually appeared there, four-armed Narayan form, appeared before the gopis, and the gopis saw Lord Narayan and they went, "Oh, Narayan, have you seen Krishna?" Oh, okay, chalo. They just told him to go again because they were looking for Krishna. They didn't want to see the Narayan form. But then, of course, he also explains that in front of Srimati Radharani, Krishna can't hide himself, and he had to show his Shamsundar form, because that's the dearest form to Srimati Radharani, and Krishna cannot hide himself before Srimati Radharani. So although Devaki is not in the Vrindavan platform, she's near to the Vrindavan platform. On the Vrindavan platform, the mother of Krishna is Mother Yashoda, and on the Mathura and Dwarka platform, the mother of Krishna is Devaki. So Krishna came, of course, to give his darshan to Devaki and Vasudeva, his eternal parents, in Mathura. And first, when he first appeared at his birth, he showed his four-armed Vishnu form. And even Devaki, because she wanted to experience this Vatsalya Bhav, she asked him, please, you hide this form. Please, you show your two-armed Shamsundar form, like that. Because in Vaikuntha, well, Krishna displays his four-armed forms, the worship is in Aishvarya Bhav, in the mood of opulence. Everybody understands that he is the Supreme Lord Narayan. Whereas in Vrindavan, it's just Krishna. Even Krishna forgets in Vrindavan. I was just listening to a lecture where it was explained in Krishna has two aspects, Sarvagya and Mukta, meaning in Mathura, Dwarka, sphere, platform, Krishna is the all-knowing Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in Vrindavan, he's Mukta, he forgets. He himself forgets by his own Yoga Maya potency that he's actually the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how would it be possible for him to enjoy these pastimes like wrestling with the cowherd boys if he already knows in advance who's going to win or what's going to happen? No, he actually forgets. And to relish these sweet, loving relationships with his different devotees in the 5 different rasas, and then sometimes, of course, Kamsa, he's there in Mathura and he's thinking of Krishna also all the time. But he's thinking in an unfavorable, inimical way. So it's not favorable to Krishna, but he's thinking of Krishna all the time. So he sends his Keshi demon. He sends the Keshi demon and so many demons. But this particular day he sent the Keshi demon to go and kill Krishna. And it was just the day when Madhumangal had come up to Krishna and said, it's not fair, it's not right. I'm the Brahmana here. You're just a Vaishya, you're a cowherd boy. But somehow or other, so many more ladus are coming to you. That's just not right. I think what it must be, you're wearing this yellow dhoti, and you have this peacock feather, and you're playing a flute. That's why more ladus are coming to you. So can I wear it for one day? Krishna says, sure. And so he gave Madhumangal his yellow dhoti and peacock feather and flute to wear for one day, like that. But it was just the day when Kamsa sent the Keshi demon. So of course Keshi, he asked Kamsa, well, how do I know who's Krishna? Oh, he's that boy, he wears a yellow dhoti, he has a peacock feather in his hair, he plays the flute, that's how you will recognize him. Okay, acha. So he goes to Vrindavan, of course he sees Madhumangal, starts to chase him. Madhumangal gets scared like anything and hides behind Krishna. And then Krishna has to kill the Keshi demon. So it was not worthwhile to take Krishna's attire. Anyhow, but somehow or other Krishna's duty, for a better word, because he's come to kill the demons, he has a job to do in Mathura, to kill Kamsa. And he's forgetting, because he's so absorbed in his relationships with the residents of Vrindavan, these loving relationships. So then that same day, in the afternoon, Narada Muni comes to Vrindavan. And of course, as soon as Krishna sees Narada Muni, because we can understand a person's state of mind even just by looking at them, by looking in their eyes, what is their consciousness. So as soon as Krishna sees Narada Muni, he remembers, oh, that's right, Devaki Nandan, I have Mother Devaki and Vyasadeva in Mathura, and I have to liberate them, and I have to kill King Kamsa. He's reminded by Narada Muni. He thinks, yeah, okay, but so Narada Muni leaves, but he's worried. He's thinking, yes, but Krishna momentarily remembered, but now he's going to go again, milking the cows and going to the wrestling arena and get involved with Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. He'll forget again. So then that night, Akrura arrives in Vrindavan. And he comes from Mathura, and everybody there, of course, is thinking that Krishna is the son of Devaki and Vasudeva, because that heavenly voice was also speaking at the time of Devaki's marriage, that the eighth son will kill King Kamsa. So everybody's only thinking of Krishna as Devaki's son, whereas in Vrindavan, he's only thinking of Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, and everybody's thinking, no, Krishna is Nanda Nandana, Yashoda Nandana. Anyhow, so somehow or other he's taken to Mathura to fulfill this promise of killing the demons. And anyway, so many nice pastimes. And then the Brahman thread needs to be performed and so many things. And then Krishna and Balaram, they understand, if we are staying here in Mathura, we feel so much separation from Vrindavan, it will be too difficult. And if the residents of Vrindavan find out that we are feeling so much pain, they will also feel pain. So what to do? So they understood they were going to be sent to a Gurukul. So somebody suggested, well, who should be the teacher? Well, Narada Muni. He should be the teacher of Krishna Balaram, no? But Krishna Balaram, they discussed amongst themselves, no. We cannot have a Vaishnav Guru. Because if we have he will immediately recognize, oh, this is actually Krishna Balaram. They're the Supreme Lord. And then they want to serve us. We'll never have this teacher-student relationship. So they themselves decided that, no, let it be Sandipani Muni, because he's a Shivite. I found that interesting. That's why I'm bringing it up, because we were talking about Lord Shiva and the demigods and like that. So they decided to go to Ujjain, which apparently even still now, Lord Shiva is present. There are many Shiva temples are there. And Sandipani Muni, he was a Shivite. So they figured, because he's worshipping Lord Shiva, that he won't think of us as Krishna and Balaram being the Supreme Lord, and we'll actually learn something. There will be a proper, disciple-guru relationship. So anyhow, very sweet. I'm just repeating what I heard from this one lecture myself. So we were discussing this point, how Lord Krishna comes to show his pastimes. Why he has to do that, Prabhupada is explaining in this verse that I was quoting from 10th Canto, Chapter 3, Text 31. He says, because Bhakti, Bhagavan and Bhakta do not belong to the material world. Bhakti, Bhagavan and Bhakta do not belong to the material world. And it is being explained here, like in Bhagavad-Gita, how it's very rare, that mostly people are engaged in karma, fruitive activities, pious activities. Out of those, some might come to Gyan, and out of those millions, maybe somebody might become a devotee of Lord Krishna. Muktanam apisidanam narayana parayana sudurlabha prashantatma kotishvapi mahamune. Among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. So this Krishna Bhakti is sudurlabham, it's very rare. Because Bhakti is not the vritti or the natural faculty or occupation of the Tatastha Jiva Shakti, the marginal living entities. Also, it is not the vritti of the Bahiranga Mahashakti, the external material energy. Rather, bhakti is the vritti of Bhagavan's internal energy, the Svarup Shakti. Because of this, bhakti, Bhagavan and bhakta are not available here in the material world. Jiva Goswami has said in Bhakti Sandarbha, Paramatma Vaibhava Ganane Cha Tatashta Shakti Rupanam Chit Eka Rasanam Api. The Tatashta Jivas are Vaibhav emanations of Paramatma. Since bhakti is the vritti of the Svarup Shakti, it is not available to the Tatashta Jivas, who are the Vaibhav emanations of Paramatma. For these reasons it is said that bhakti, Bhagavan and bhakta do not belong to the material world. The Tatashta Jivas are those who abuse their minute independence and come here to the material world. This material world is the manifestation of Maya Shakti, the illusory energy. Therefore, bhakti has no place here in the material world. Bhakti is the vritti of Krishna Svarup Shakti. So that is why the Lord himself is either as Sham Sundar or as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They descend here. And also the Nitya Parishadas, the eternal associates of Krishna in the spiritual world, they come here to present Krishna consciousness, to show the Leelas of Krishna, to show the knowledge of Krishna. Otherwise, the Tatashta Jivas in this material world, they would have no knowledge of it. Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtana. So Krishna descends himself or comes in the form of his holy name. And Prabhupada says, from this earth, we can approach the spiritual world. There's a beautiful verse in glorification of the holy name, because everything always for us comes back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings and him giving us the pure holy name, which is non-different from Krishna. Krishna and the holy name are the same. And actually there's only one difference, and that is that the holy name is more merciful. So in the Padma Purana, a very famous verse, Prabhupada gives, if a devotee once utters the holy name of the Lord, or if it penetrates his mind or enters his ear, which is the channel of oral reception, that holy name will certainly deliver him from material bondage, whether vibrated properly or improperly, with correct or incorrect grammar, or properly joined or vibrated in separate parts. O Brahmana, the potency of the holy name is therefore certainly great. However, if one uses the vibration of the holy name for the benefit of the material body, for material wealth and followers, or under the influence of greed or atheism, in other words, if one utters the name with offenses, such chanting will not produce the desired result very soon. Therefore, one should diligently avoid offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord. So the holy name has so much spiritual potency that it can deliver one from all sinful reactions. We started the class speaking who is the most sinful person. And he's the one that's not thinking of Krishna. So just by chanting the holy name means remembering Krishna, thinking of Krishna, and all your sinful reactions are completely annihilated. And you're freed from all material entanglement. And the holy name is so powerful, it must act. But we have to avoid offenses, otherwise that benefit will be delayed. The action of that benefit will be delayed. So just to come back to the beginning point of the class then, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 2.103, it is said, O reservoir of all good qualities, just worship Sri Krishna, the purifier of all purifiers, the most exalted of the personalities worshipped by the choicest poetry. Worship him with a faithful, unflinching mind, without duplicity and in a highly elevated manner. Thus worship the Lord, whose name is like the sun. For just a slight appearance of the sun dissipates the darkness of night. So a slight appearance of the holy name of Krishna can drive away all the darkness of ignorance that arises in the heart due to greatly sinful activities performed in previous lives. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you, dear devotees, for your kind attention. Please excuse all my shortcomings. Does anybody have any questions or would like to make a comment? Yes, Mataji?
A clarification. Like it's being told Krishna has two types of energies. One is Yog Maya and one is Mahamaya, Maya, which is Mahamaya Gratya. So if it is a devotee, if Krishna sees that he's my devotee, does the Maya help in his endeavors, in his material endeavors also?
Does Maya help a devotee in his material act?
Maya is Krishna, is under Krishna.
Yes.
It is Maya, the
Yes.
material energy is,
Yes.
is the slave of Krishna. So we don't call ourselves a devotee, but at least we are in the path of devotion. So does that material energy of Krishna will help us in our endeavors?
Well, you see, like we were saying in the class, as soon as you make an endeavor, it's mentioned in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I can't exactly remember the number now, but it is explained there that as soon as one comes to Krishna, as soon as one endeavors, makes the attempt to come to Krishna, protection is immediate. So the jivas that have come here to the material world, they're immediately captured by Maya, and they're under the control of the 3 modes of material nature. They're like the prison guards. You know, we're shackled by these modes, and that's what entangles us, birth after birth in the material world. However, last time we had this beautiful verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, that as soon as you come to the Lord and you chant the holy name, Maya releases you. You're not under the control of Mahamaya. Maya releases you. She has to, because she's also a Vaishnavi, and she's also under the control of Krishna. So the function of Mahamaya in the material world is to keep the wayward jivas in illusion, because that's what they want. They don't want to think of Krishna. They want to forget Krishna, which is only possible by the influence of Maya. But as soon as you come to Krishna, you're not under the control of Maya.
Then whom control we are?
Krishna. Directly. There might be a transition period, because it's like when you're standing in a boat, it still gets rocked by the waves, but you're in the security of the boat. You're not in the ocean. Living entities are drowning in the ocean of material existence, no? Samsara dhamma nara lida loka. But now you've been captured and you're placed in the boat of Krishna consciousness. So you're not in a drowning condition anymore. You might still be, a little bit swayed or affected, but you're under Krishna's protection. Krishna says that himself.
Maybe even if unknowingly, we unknowingly, with our limited intelligence or low intelligence, maybe we can make mistakes in our endeavors, because it is a very normal thing.
That's normal, yes.
It's very normal.
Yes.
But I hope we will not get entangled in that potential.
Yeah.
We will not get entangled.
No. If Prabhupada speaks about that, say in your previous life, before coming to Krishna consciousness, maybe you were in the habit of smoking cigarettes. Prabhupada gives that example. But now you've given it up because you're practicing Krishna consciousness. But somehow or other you find yourself in a situation, there's some cigarettes and maybe you're tempted like that. But that's just an accidental mistake, and that's easily forgiven because it was just due to bad habit. You're becoming purified like that. the important point was, like what I was saying at the end, that Krishna knows our shortcomings.
True.
We're in Kali Yuga, what sadhana can I do? How can I focus myself 24 hours on Krishna? It's very difficult, no? And we make mistakes, and we have imperfect senses, and the whole atmosphere is full of mistakes. However, as long as we make a sincere endeavor, and we're not deliberately committing offenses to the holy name, then Krishna will always prompt us and guide us from within our heart, and through the agency of the spiritual master, he will point out, now hang on, be careful. Don't commit offenses, like I was reading from Nectar of Devotion about the offenses. The second offense was to equate the names of the demigods with the name of Krishna. So 10 offenses are listed. So in the chanting of the holy name, we have to be very diligent. That's why usually in the temple in the morning, all the devotees recite the 10 offenses against the holy name. So as long as you're endeavoring and you're aware of not to commit these offenses, you're under protection.
Can I speak?
Yes?
In Bhagavad-Gita, one sloka is Devi Hyasa
Yagunamai Mama Mamai. Yes. Yes, this divine energy of mine is very difficult to overcome. Right? This mode. Thank you, Prabhu. It's a very important sloka. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. You see? Matati, you want to say something?
I just remember that at Bhakti Shastra you said that Krishna will fulfill the devotee's material desires, but in a way that you don't want it anymore.
Oh yes, that's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna says, do you think I'm such a fool that I will fulfill the material desires of my devotee who are dear to me, that they get again tangled in the material world? No. Yes. And there's that famous verse, I'm sorry, I can't quote off by heart. Akamosa. Thank you, that word. Whether you have material desires, whether you have no material desires, whether you want liberation, whatever you want, bring it to Krishna. Because definitely he loves you and he will fulfill your desires. But he will not fulfill it in such a way that you're going to forget him.
True.
You see? Whereas the demigods, like Lord Shiva, he fulfilled that desire of Banasura, we were reading in the Krishna book one Sunday, with 1,000 arms, right? He wanted to have a good fight, right? But Lord Shiva, Tatashtu, he can fulfill, so I'll organize, you can have a good fight with Krishna. That'll teach you a lesson. But it doesn't free that person's heart. It's only when Banasura actually came before Krishna and realized, first he had to run away. But when he realized, this is actually the Supreme Lord, then only the heart can be free. Like that. So, any corrections, did I? Anybody can... Did I say everything okay? Yeah? All right. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.